Well, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're calling from. It's a pleasure to be able to be in the space today in a very important topic regarding the power of narrative. Today's session will be recorded in a summary previously and summarized as previous webinars will be coming out shortly after. A reminder for people, there is a Q&A section in our webinar. We encourage you to think about questions that we could use towards the midpoint end of the webinar. Again, my name is Eddie Bocanegra. Excited to be here today. Over the past several months and through each of our CVI action plan webinars, one theme has kept rising to the surface. Whether we're talking about standard practices or wellness, community work, or research success, this work often comes down to how we communicate and to whom. The way we tell our stories shapes how people understand the work, how they value it, and ultimately how they invest in it. Just last week, we were in Tucson, Arizona, with several dozen organizations from across the Southwest region. Folks came from different cities, different histories, and different models. Yet the commitment to community safety and healing was unmistakably shared. And while there is similarities in CVI efforts across the country, one thing became clear in that room. We still need a common language to help articulate the good work that all of you are doing every single day. Narratives, whether harmful or helpful, operate across multiple layers. They show up in our core values and worldviews, in the images and stories that we circulate about our communities, in the messages we send, and in the policy positions that shape what's possible. And meaningful narratives change doesn't happen by accident. It requires sustained effort across all of these levels at the same time. That's why today's webinar is so important. You're going to hear from a group of leaders who have been working for well over a year to help us build more aligned, more powerful narratives for the CVI field. A narrative that reflects our truth, our impact, and our vision for what safety can look like when it's rooted in community. And it's important for me to mention that much of what you hear today, I hope, reflects based on much of the input that many of you who are on this call have given. And this is our way to reflect back in our listening. So, with that, it is my honor to welcome someone who has been a champion of this work from the very beginning, a dear friend and advocate, Fatima, who's the executive director of the Javi. Fatima?
Eddie, thank you so much and welcome to all of you. As Eddie said, I'm Fatima Loren Dreyer. I'm Executive Director of the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention. We are a national network of hospital-based violence intervention programs that supports our contributions to the overall CVI ecosystem. And it's really an honor as representing the Javi, but the broader field that we've served as coordinator of our narrative change strategy since the beginning. We're really grateful to have that opportunity to really leverage this conversation to highlight work that's happening in the field and really turn things over to you all to engage us in conversation about what you're doing and what you need in order to advance our overall goals as a field as it relates to storytelling and narrative. So I'm really thrilled that we get an opportunity to do that today, and I'm excited to get to the panel. But first, I wanted to do some table stakes level setting for us. We met about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in March of 2025. This was after the start of the new administration, to have a conversation about where we were and what narrative goals we wanted to accomplish as a field. And we convened about 100 leaders, CVI leaders across the country, representing 66 organizations. And so I wanted to share a bit of the notes from our conversation back then. And following this panel, you will receive a report that shares some of those highlights, kind of a snapshot of some of the collective wisdom in the group. So I'm going to do a little bit of overview and then pass it to the panel to share. So In the room last year, we grounded our discussion in the action plan. And if you recall, we spent several years pulling together the action plan, and we have a narrative change section. We wanted to ensure that we had priorities centered on our research, understanding the audiences, and contemplating a national campaign that advances CVI, that we want to always be lifting up what's happening locally, that's rooted in our voices as Black and Brown communities, and focusing on how the national connects to the local to ensure that locally there is engagement, in kind of an external affairs component, so that media and other stories that are talking about local work can feature CVI organizations. So those were important priorities for us. Next slide, please. And so at our convening, you'll see photos throughout, we wanted to understand how our narrative change goals shifted public perception, empowered CVI workers, supported funding CVI through policy and advocacy. And there were a lot of themes came up also about our message discipline around standardization. When we say CVI, what do we mean? And is that universally understood when we're talking to journalists, when we're talking about the work on the ground? Next slide, please. Another important aspect of the work that we did was really understanding that, like any field, and we looked at examples from the AIDS epidemic to domestic violence, to marriage equality movements, that there are, when you do big work. We're talking decades long work, and many of you have been in this for decades and understand how deeply these core harmful narratives are, and helpful narratives are in advancing our overall goals for the field. So those core root things, those root issues or narratives impact the messages. They impact, they're informed by values in society. They show up in the stories that we tell. And so we spent quite a bit of time as a group crowdsourcing our understanding of what the harmful and helpful narratives are around CVI. So I'm going to share a handful, but the report will share all of our notes. Next slide, please. So, what are harmful narratives? Like, how do we define them? They're incorrect perceptions of reality. And we found at a very high level that people didn't really understand what causes violence, their views about the people who are impacted by violence, and what it takes to reduce it. People often saw law enforcement as the central voice, and central truth around violence prevention, and didn't think about root causes or other systems like CVI that can support and frankly drive impact in terms of violence reductions. So, how people link violence to things like poverty, racism, oppression, that is harmful to our work. And that that these narratives that we see and the values and worldviews that undergird them are often perpetuated in major channels, particularly in the press and social media. So, what were some others that we covered in the next page? And these are in the words, we didn't edit these. So these are coming from the community, from our leaders. There's a perception that CVI doesn't hold our clients or patients accountable, right? This idea if you're engaged in violence, where is accountability? They don't see the connection in CVI. This view that violence itself is not preventable, that you just have to kind of quote unquote get the bad guys after it's happened. People don't change. There is no redemption or transformation that can happen with human beings, which we know is not true, but obviously hurts are because our claim is that we can transform lives. The idea that CVI is soft on crime, that CVI and law enforcement are enemies, like right, we're anti-law enforcement, and that criminal justice, which often violence prevention is situated there, is not related to public health. And that there's like this zero-sum dynamic between CVI and law enforcement, that one, if you fund one, you can't fund the other. Next slide. We're going to move now to helpful narratives, ones where we're looking at the role of an ecosystem where there are different players and sectors, healthcare, law enforcement, community members, and that we're talking about coordination, but it's focused on a humanistic, response. That CVI has done many powerful things and that our strategies drive public safety, reduce harm, are trauma informed, that all of those are contributors to society. So those are helpful overarching themes and some of the details that we heard from you. CVI is rooted in healing. Those who are closest to the problem are at the root of the solution. Everyone wants to be safe. Law enforcement can't do this on their own. CVI is a part of the public safety ecosystem. Everyone has a role to play in ending community violence. The CVI addresses the root causes of violence. And this connection, less violent communities yield better economic outcomes, and other outcomes that are important, health-related outcomes, other outcomes that are important for society. You all may remember that for several years, the Javi conducted national polling to understand how a national representative group of respondents understands CVI. And I won't go into this chart, but saying that CVI works, that it's effective, well, wow, we are in an amazing time to tell that story because we have seen historic reductions in violence. We understand the CVI's impact. There have been a number of media stories covering that, new studies that are coming out every day that talk about effectiveness. So we are in an amazing position. And with that momentum, I'm excited to hear our panel talk about where we go from here. So I don't think I have another slide after this one. Oh yes, okay, sorry, one more. Opportunities for action. So this is the final piece for our from our Miami convening, that we want to continue to support the research necessary to drive national strategy. So we need to know how our messages are testing out in the field so that our strategy is very closely aligned. There was this idea of a national working group so we can continue to coordinate work that's happening at the national and local level, and infrastructure building. So what does that mean? That's crisis communications and response. It's making sure that we are co-train and build staff locally and nationally that brings comms expertise to the next level. So these are opportunities for us. They're well within our capability to do as a field. And so again, I'm excited to talk with the panel about more. On a final note, if you can to the next slide, please get in touch at the Javi, join our newsletter, and we can be found at thejavi.org. And now it's really my honor to pass things to Andrew Woods. Andrew has been a longtime leader in the CVI field in Hartford, Connecticut. Andrew, we're looking forward to hearing about your strategy and your comm strategy and all your leadership in Connecticut. We'll pass it to
Well,
you.
thank you very much, Fatima. I appreciate it. And thanks to the panelists and the host of this webinar. We're excited to be here. Andrew Woods, Chief Executive Officer of HCTC. I am the founding executive director of the organization, started back in 1998. Became the first in the state of Connecticut back in 2004 to actually stand up a HVIP program and CVI program here in the city of Hartford and across the state as well. And today I'll be talking about the work that our team has done, which is mainly we developed a media and comms team here at HCTC, mainly in response of over the years of experience in, you've heard the term empathy gap, and we're talking about visibility gap and so forth. And I remember thinking back and going back as I was discussing this with my staff and looking at our timeline around some of this when we really started really making the investments and really started leaning into seeing what we can do to change the narrative around supporting victims of violent crime and getting the support from a variety of different stakeholders. And back in 2012, in fact, it became real clear to us, in fact, here in Connecticut, that was in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook mass school shooting. And it became clear with some of the conversation that was going on in terms of a lot of the support and coordination among folks, focused on and supporting that community. and then looking at the comparison between that response and support and that of addressing and supporting crime victims in urban areas such as the city of Hartford. And so that started us really, really narrowing in and really getting very hyper focused on what can we do to really change the narrative, quite frankly, on how people are viewing victims of violent crime, specifically boys and men of color, gunshot victims in Hartford. And so we started talking with folks. We started thinking about creative ways of doing that. And and one of the things that jumped out to me over time was, if there's not a big major concern about urban gunshot victims, then maybe they might be concerned about the cost. And so I partnered with a firm out of DC and said, hey, listen, I'd like to do a return on investment analysis. Let's look at the cost of crime or gunshot victimization here in the city of Hartford. Let's take a look at if we were to, based on our interventions, provide support, the immediate response, the wraparound service supports, getting young people back on track or in terms of back in school and into the workforce, what could be some of our cost savings, taxpayer benefit, reduction in welfare cost, increase in decrease in criminal justice savings. And we end up using that ROI as the baseline or the basis for which we begin to have more serious conversations with a lot of our lawmakers and our stakeholders, community folks, and really, really saying, hey, listen, this is another way of looking at this. And if you're concerned, these are other ways that you might be able to lean into this and support the work. That led to, quite frankly, us actually securing resources. It enabled us to even push forth policy recommendations to our state legislature, significant work with our congressional delegation in terms of educating them around the issues, drawing more attention from local foundations and the like to say, hey, wait a minute, I think you're on to something. We can get behind some of this, and it's a no-brainer. By 2019, we also began to make investments in terms of building our in-house capacity in terms of a comms team and making sure that we had folks on board, whether we built them up from scratch, if you will, providing them with getting technical assistance and sending them off to conferences and getting them engaged and learning everything they could about narrative change work, and also working with external media providers to really help us build out again our capacity. That resulted here in HCTC with us becoming the first HVIP to actually secure VOCA funding for our work back in 2019. It also resulted in us leading and creating the first statewide or one of the few statewide HVIP collaboratives in the country. I think we were one of three at the time. It led to us working with the Javi and others and bringing in Fatima here at Hartford and meeting with our lawmakers and with our hospitals and with other CVI groups and stakeholders, and then putting together a bill with our lawmakers and end up passing, which actually passed our state legislature and got signed into law here in our offices for a Medicaid bill to support CVI efforts. And then shortly afterwards, being appointed myself as the inaugural chair of the Connecticut General Assembly Gun Violence Intervention and Prevention Advisory Committee. But all of this work was really done after years of cultivating relationships. It didn't just start in 2012. It really started with years of cultivating relationships with a variety of different folks. So when the time came, it became much more easier for me to gain attention, but it also required, again, the investments and learning the language and making sure we had the support here in-house to do some of this work. Next slide. And so our comms team, they're the voice of the hub here at HCTC. And basically they like to say, hey, listen, we're not just we're storytellers, and we are visibility architects. And basically, one of the things that we're very proud of here at HCTC is how they go about doing their work, taking a look at exactly what are the residents saying in terms of what are our other stakeholders saying, and how do we craft our messages to make sure that we're telling the stories of not only our residents, but other CVI groups, how other stakeholders view this issue, and how it needs to be communicated to multiple audiences to gain additional visibility for the support of CVI work here in the city of Hartford and across the state of Connecticut. Next slide. And so our team breaks things down, common practice based on segmentation and messaging. And in the last couple of years, it's been specifically engaging policymakers, healthcare systems, and the community, with policymakers taking a look at how do we work with them to even create legislative briefs, do the storytelling around how CVI is a cost-effective health intervention. We're working with our hospital leaders and other CVI groups to be able to make sure that we communicate to people that, hey, listen, healing starts at the bedside, but also it doesn't end there, obviously. It also is a part of the process when we talk about wraparound service supports and the interventions that take place in the community with our HVIP program and other CVI programs as well. And then, of course, obviously, making sure that our residents understand that they too are the architects of neighborhood peace by getting them engaged and being the voice and being the storytellers and us providing that support for them to be able to do so. One thing I always like to share with people, and I remember sharing this with the governor a couple of years back, and I said, it's not just about intervention when it comes down to CVI work, because oftentimes people believe that it's just one thing, and it's not. We talked about that here earlier, is that in HCTC, we talk about prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery. We like people to understand that CVI work is really about addressing a continuum of care. Again, prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery, advocacy and policy work as well, and so forth. Because I don't know how many countless times I've had conversations with people and they think it's just one thing. They just think it's a bunch of guys and girls running around out in the community, taking guns out of people's hands, you name it, etc., that kind of stuff. When in fact, it's much more deeper than that. We make significant investments in CVI workers, organizations, you name it, the range of support and infrastructure related to doing this work. And we want people to understand that it's not just one thing, it is really a comprehensive system that we operate within, and we provide just as much support for our staff and the workers who do this work as someone might do inside a hospital or in any other setting. Next slide. And so this is, basically the visibility gap that, hey, leaving when misinformation and silence, our staff like to say, is obviously a root. Misinformation or silence takes root, and next thing you know, you're not getting your message through. One of the things on this point here, a couple of years back, we engaged our judicial branch, which actually funds VOCA, Victims of Violent Crime Act funds, to our organization and many others across the state of Connecticut. And it became very concerning to them and us as well that a lot of people don't know about CVI. Put it this way, not everyone knows about CVI work in our communities. And so that gap there, the state of Connecticut wanted to know when they administered the survey was how many folks knew about CVI and victim service supports in the state of Connecticut and in communities like ours, and how many didn't. The gap was significant. And what became clear to me and my team was that we understood why, because oftentimes when a person encounters a CVI organization or they're drawn into receiving services, it has become because they may have been a high-risk individual or their family member became a victim of violent crime. So the average citizen, if they don't fall within that realm or within that category, they may not even know that CVI exists and so forth. And so part of our job was that we said, hey, look, let's take a look at this data. Let's take a look at this because not just people who are injured or violently or at risk, everyone needs to know that these services are available. And so that is where we begin to make even the more additional investments here at HCTC to make sure we're getting the word out. And there's a variety of different ways that we did that. And I can always come back and talk more about those additional outreach and engagement strategies in addition to some of the other comms work. Next slide. And so our team creates what we like to call the 360 awareness engine, which is basically a few tools here. Is that we have a year-round effort to where we have a monthly social media content calendar where we crank out consistent planned storytelling among all platforms, social media platforms and the like. Also creating short story videos. In addition to short story videos, basically telling the narrative around this work and around people's lives, et cetera, and the value of these programs, but also full-fledged not documentaries, but full-fledged films, if you will, or videos that basically we're hosting a forum that's talking about this issue and highlighting the importance of it, making sure we capture that. When it comes down to, um, again, just the short videos, long videos, you name it, our team is equipped to handle some of that to make sure that we're around and we're available to do so. Next slide. And so, investments in staff. I may have touched on this just a little bit here at HCTC. All of our staff, quarterly
Andrew, if
staff
I
meetings.
may just interrupt you, you have like 10 seconds to wrap up just so we can get to our other panelists. But we love it. Just wrap up
You
for
got it.
us.
Absolutely. And so making sure that we got investments with staff to where they too, not just our comms team, are engaged in these efforts to when it comes down to branding and marketing. And then lastly, um, and that's actually mainly it, the investments, making sure that folks are engaged in these efforts across the HCTC's staffing. I'll close it there. Thank you.
Andrew, this is remarkable. Thank you so much. I know there are going to be a lot of questions. You really gave us such a rich understanding of the work in Hartford and broadly in in Connecticut. It's now my pleasure to pass things over to Anthony Smith from Cities United.
Hey, good afternoon, you all. Thank you for that, Fatima. And again, thank you for your leadership and your team's leadership and bringing this conversation together. And shout out to the whole CVI Action Plan team for making sure that we continue these conversations. I think, as Eddie said earlier, that this is so timely and needed in the conversation, and as so much is shifting and changing, how we tell our story matters, and it's important that we own our stories and move the work forward. So I'm just thankful to be a part of the call. Next slide, please. And at Cities United, as you also heard Andrew say, as he talked about, like about 6 years ago, we created positions and departments to really focus on storytelling and narrative change, and really wanted to make sure that we put the right engine in place to not just tell our story at CU, but also to support the jurisdictions and the organizations that we work with in telling their stories. So we really wanted to make sure that we had the right people in places and the right information and the right tools to really push the narrative forward. And using the asset framing conversation, as you were here, Traven and Shortest talk a lot about it at the Be Me network out of Miami, but they also work nationally, is that what we say and how we say it matters. So making sure that we tell the right story of the communities that we're working in, like what is this work and what is it not work. Also, I want to just also put a pin in one of the things that Andrew talked about as well, is that the communities that most of this work happen in, a lot of those folks don't know what CVI is. So when they're talking about safety and they're talking about public safety, they go to the old model and they go to policing and they go to the things that they know. Our job is to do better at making sure we're educating not just folks outside of our communities, but also folks within our communities, making sure that we have a network effect, like that our stories are showing how our ideas, our strategies can spread, helping making sure that we're focused on the network and the bigger picture, while also uplifting the voices of those who are doing the work, those who are benefiting from the work, and those who are most connected to the work. So making sure that we amplify those voices and create platforms for folks to be seen and heard and telling their stories. But then also making sure that we're building meaningful relationships. I think one of the things to what we know that one of the things that helps us tell stories the best is that we have relationships and that we build meaningful relationships with those who we're telling stories about and those who we're asking to share their stories. So when Cities United comes into a jurisdiction, we know we've got to have relationships not only with the folks at the mayor's office and community-based partners, but also in those communities that are most impacted by community violence. So making sure that you create a system where you can get to the whole network, where you can also lift the voices up, but then also create those meaningful relationships for folks to trust you and moving the work forward. Next slide, please. One of the opportunities that we've had to really work in lifting up voices across the country is we've been, as a part of our Leading the Way tour, last April, we kicked off this tour to visit 20 jurisdictions across the country. And one of the things that we were clear about is that we wanted to use local talent to help us share the story of what's going on. So in each of the places that we went, where you can see this is a little bit dated, we are now on our 17th tour. We got three more to go. We identify young Black and brown folks to help us tell the story of those communities. These are folks who do videography, who do photography, and are helping us create this narrative. And you can go online and pull some of the pictures and things that they take. But this is giving the local talent and the local folks opportunities to tell their stories. They do interviews with folks, young leaders, folks who are doing the work on the ground, with the mayors and other elected officials. So we're capturing the local story. And also, as part of this tour, one of the things my team have created is we do a narrative scan. We want to know what are folks saying about community safety, public safety, CVI. So before we get on the ground, we already know what the narrative is and we know what the story is. But these new storytellers who we have been able to meet across the country, now we're thinking about how do we work with them as a collective to really continue to move the work forward. But the Leading the Way tour has also helped us lift up the voices of those who are doing the work on the ground because everywhere we go, we do press conferences, we engage with press, and have been able to generate a lot of positive stories around what CVI is, what the work is, but more importantly, who are the people who are doing the work. I think one of the things I heard Andrew also say was that, a lot of times people see us or see you all on the front line in your sweatshirts and in your jackets and in your t-shirts, but don't know what you do and don't know how you contribute to keeping their communities safe. And this was a way for us to help lift that up and move that forward. Next slide, please. And then also, while on our tour, the first tour stop we did was in Austin, Texas. It was in April, and it was right around the time that the federal cuts came to the work. We were on the ground with Amber Goodwin, who runs the Community Violence Legal Network. We called Amber, we called Fatima, as you all know, over the Javi, and we also called Community Justice. And we came together to create this Protect CVI, this action plan that was really around uplifting. One, it was calling for, hey, we need those resources back, get those dollars back, but also helping the world and the country understand what community violence is. So we were really clear around like explaining what it is, advocating for what it is. You can download the toolkits as you see the QR code over there where you can download the toolkits. We created some toolkits around narrative change, how know your rights and all of these different things around there. But taking advantage of some of these moments is also important, that how we tell the narrative and how we move the work forward so that folks don't co-opt our narrative and take over our ownership of our work as we move it forward. Next slide. One of the other things that you've seen this a lot over the last couple of years, we are telling our own story through books, through documentaries, and through other forms. CU is not the only one that has put out a book. We put this book out last year, You Gotta Be Other People. And what it does is it highlights 12 of the folks who are doing frontline work here in Louisville, from hospital base to street outreach to violence intervention. These are the men and women, and also two young people who have received services who were impacted by gun violence. They're telling their story. So creating platforms and places for us to tell our story, tell our narrative. And one of the things that we take seriously is that making sure that it's just not one story, but there's multiple stories. So how do you go from portrait to landscape and really understand what's taking place across a jurisdiction and not just in one place as you move things forward? So again, writing our stories, Devon from Advanced Peace has got a book out, Kobe from Clear Balance, and multiple other people have put out books and things like that. But then there's documentaries. I know there's one that Dr. Chico's got out. Marcus has one out. The original Interrupters, we just, I think, celebrated 20 to 25-year anniversary of that. So there's ways for us to tell our stories and mediums to do that. And this is just one that Cities United helped put together here in Louisville, but we think it has a resonate across the country. Next slide. This is our convening. We use this as an opportunity to raise up stories and move stories forward. Those who was with us last year in Louisville, we appreciate you and hope other folks will join us in Memphis, October the 20th through the 23rd. But this is another opportunity for us nationally to come together, share stories, and share information with each other and move the work forward. Next should be my last, I believe. There's another place where you can get our resources. You can go to citiesunited.org and pull down resources. Like I said, there's a lot of different things here that you can look at and pull down that will help you tell your story and move things forward. Next slide. I'll wrap up and turn. Then, if you need me or need to get in contact with Cities United, this is my information. Last thing I'll leave us with is that, again, it's important for us to own our stories, tell our stories. One of the things I say when I'm on the ground in jurisdictions is that at the top of the year, every year when we see press conferences, it's usually the mayor and the police chief. I recommend that CVI, the ecosystem itself, holds its own press conference and talk about the work that we did and you all did collectively to see those numbers reduce. So how do you do that and what do you do that with? So again, excited to be a part of this conversation, thankful for the timeliness of it, and looking forward to the Q&A as we move things forward.
Anthony, thank you so much. Thank you for the love you show community and through your storytelling. It's truly remarkable and special. I am now to bring us home. We're in for a treat. We've got Ro Patrick here from the Ad Council, who wrote and her team joined us in Miami last year and has been hard at work ever since to help pull together an incredible set of updates for us about Ad Council's overall campaign on gun violence. So, Ro, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Fatima. Hi, everybody. Super excited to be here and really just truly humbled to be alongside Eddie, Fatima, Andrew, and Anthony and share an update on our progress on developing a national communications campaign on CVI. I'm Ro, as Fatima mentioned, at the Ad Council. And just for quick level set for those who aren't familiar with the Ad Council, we are a national nonpartisan nonprofit that uses the power of communications to build social impact campaigns that address America's most pressing issues at scale. So violence and CVI very much right in our wheelhouse. But before I sort of get into the content, I wanted just to take a minute and own and acknowledge that a year ago when we were all together in Miami, we did not have the most graceful entrance into this space. And I just want to say I'm truly and deeply grateful for that honest, candid, and timely feedback at the time. It really gave us the opportunity to take a really important step back and reset our approach. So today, I'm truly excited to share our year-long progress and journey of listening and learning and co-creating with the field, really all in service of creating a national public awareness campaign, shining a light on the incredible work you all do and the impact of CVI. So on this slide really is the beginning of our journey. We kicked off in June of last year with a full day workshop in DC with 23 leaders across the CVI ecosystem. We also used that opportunity when we've got everybody in person with us to film interviews with 17 of the leaders for the documentary film, which I'll go through in just a little bit. We also spent several months visiting and holding listening sessions and filmed some additional content with CVI practitioners across the country. In Baltimore with Center for Hope and Safe Streets, in New York with Life Camp, and in LA with Urban Peace Institute and Arise and Go. Next slide, please. And every part of our development process is co-created and informed by the field. And the word co-create is really key because that is the true spirit of our collaboration. When we were together in June at the workshop, we asked folks in the room, to sort of raise their hand if they were interested in staying close with us on this project and really being part of our campaign development. And 14 leaders raised their hand and joined our CVI working group. Our ask for this group was really get in the kitchen with us and be part of this campaign every step of the way. So this is really our development timeline from insights gathering to developing our approach to concept development to testing to production to testing to more testing to campaign rollout. And our working group was with us every single step of the way. It was really critical for us to build trust, to build relationship and an open dialogue with every member of the working group so that we can really understand the feedback and be able to ask questions. So instead of holding big group meetings, big webinars, we held one-on-one calls and conversations with each member at every stage of development. So you'll see here, everything from the strategy to talking through creative ideas and script. We even went line by line, making sure that the words we were using, the scenarios we were depicting felt right and authentic at every stage. We also even have a member of the working group on set with us when we filmed the advertising so that we're capturing really what's reflecting what's happening on the ground. And this group will continue to stay with us through this process as we finalize all of the content and ready it for a campaign rollout in May. Next slide. So the campaign is still in progress, work in progress. So I don't have anything final to share with you today, but wanted to share where we are and what the ecosystem is going to look like. First off, we are trying to reach the general public. You've heard from the earlier speakers today that the public really needs to be educated on this important work. And so we just took the general public and we narrowed it ever so slightly to what we're calling the community-minded public. These are people who cares about what goes on in their community, including safety, and also live in proximity to a city. And the different pieces of the campaign are going to be a documentary short film. They're going to be PSAs, including video, outdoor, digital. All of this runs in donated media, which is really our model at the Ad Council. That means that we distribute the campaign and make it available to thousands of media outlets across the country, and they run the ads at no cost. We do not pay for media time. And then beyond the documentary and the PSAs, we're also looking at activations with podcasts, social creators, and brand and media partnerships. All of the content will drive to a new destination, a new website within agree2agree.org is our community safety hub. And for those unfamiliar, Agree to Agree is the Ad Council's overarching campaign platform around reducing the impact of firearm injuries on youth. And so this CVI work will be a part of Agree to Agree. Next slide. I'll go sort of quickly through all of the storytelling pieces. I know we're running a little bit short on time, but first is our documentary film. This is directed and produced by the incredible Deborah Riley Draper. She is a NAACP Image Award nominee among many other accolades. But our documentary features 17 leaders and practitioners across the ecosystem, as well as outreach teams from Safe Streets, Life Camp, and UPI, where we had the opportunity to film. We know that there's quite already a bit already spoken about today. Lots of documentary out there and also in development around CVI. I think what sets this one apart is that this is a high level introduction to CVI through a national lens. So we see this primarily as an educational tool, as told by voices from the field, setting the stage for an audience that really has very, very low awareness of CVI and is just starting their learning journey. So we really want to lay the groundwork for others in CVI to tell their stories. Next slide, please. So next is our PSAs. These are 30-second, 60-second advertising, and these feature really powerful conversations and unique perspective of trained CVI professionals. We knew it was important to show CVI in action, and so we did this through actor portrayal for safety, and we're bringing audiences one-on-one into a conversation between a VI and a community member that you typically don't ever see captured on film. So that picture there on the bottom is just our cast and crew. It was an incredible couple of days together. And really just, I wish I could show you stuff, but we're still in the kitchen, we're still in the edit. So cannot wait to finalize all of this roll out. And these ads will be distributed through our national network to media outlets to run again in donated time and space, starting in June with priority outreach to cities with CVI programs. So we could probably skip the next slide because these are really very much out of the things that are still very much in progress. But I wanted to spend just a minute on what we're building for our partners and for the field. So in addition to the content for the public, we're also developing a screening guide of the documentary. It will have talking points, discussion Q&A, any materials that partners, local organization can host screenings. This will be ready in May. And then we're creating messaging toolkits and amplification guide to be able to have anyone really amplify the work and use. And our hope is to roll this out in June with the new PSAs. So just, thank you for the Javi for having me here. We're super grateful and humble to be able to use our platform and play our small part in really telling your stories and driving narrative change around CVI. So with that, I want to hand it back over to Fatima to facilitate Q&A.
Thank you so much, Ro. And, I want to thank the entire team. It takes, I think, authentic and meaningful conversation to pivot in the ways that you have. And we're enormously grateful that you have and where we've landed. It's just pretty. The other thing I want to say, Ro, I'm not sure I heard you say this, but for the first two phases of the Agree to Agree campaign, something like 2.5 billion impressions is that right, across
Yeah.
all the campaign assets. I mean, that is staggering impact and reach. So we're grateful for the partnership and look forward to where we go from here. All right, so we are now at the Q&A portion of our time together. And in order to engage in Q&A, we need questions. So please go to the Q&A chat and enter your questions in. Our team will review those and bring them to us. So I'm excited to dive in. Of course, I've lost here we go. My link, my apologies, team. All right. So we have a few questions. Some are directed to individual panelists and some are overall. We're going to get to as many as we can. Andrew, I'll start with you. Based on your research, have you developed a community safety plan that can be replicated? And if so, can others have access to it?
The answer to that is yes, and it evolves. And so there may be something that we can pull up from a few years back, but there's something that we also revise periodically. And we're actually in the revision phase right now, but I can certainly get some folks some older version of a community safety plan. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, Anthony, I wonder if you might pick up the community safety plans, because I know that's something that's Cities United also.
Yeah, absolutely. I can point to a number of places where we've supported communities in putting their plans together. But also, you guys can reach out to us again at anthony@citiesunited.org, and we would be helpful there. But I think the point that Andrew made is that they should evolve and they should be updated almost annually to reflect what's going on in your community. And those are also communication documents, they're policy documents, they're budget documents. But if you look at Toledo just released a plan last year. It's called Peace in Motion. I actually have Newport News's plan here with me. I don't know if you all can see it with the thing. Theirs is called Momentum for Peace. And then we always point to our friends over at Milwaukee who has been running the Blueprint for Peace for the last 10 years that they're in the process of updating too. So there's a number of places to look at and look through if you're looking for community safety plans. But I know Andrew's them. I appreciate you saying that it's been updated and that it evolves because I think that's the thing that we got to know. It should not be stagnant.
It's powerful. There's another question here that I'm going to take some license to kind of break apart a little bit, which really focuses on how is it that we have and perpetuate these harmful narratives, right, that are kind of in the air. The question is, do you believe that because the funding kind of left out more of the raw voices within CVI. And I think by raw voices, we mean more like the practitioners, the actual deep storytelling around what the work looks like. And I think the clients and patients that we serve, like the rawness of their reality, this idea of like, because that kind of gets left out, does that perpetuate harmful narratives? Just the neglect, I think, of those voices. And if so, how do we ensure that the history of this work is part of how the work is informed moving forward? Anthony, can I come to you first?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that, Fatima. And I think when we think about that, how that piece that you just talked about, yes, when you don't have those who are closest to the issue or part of the table helping to create solutions and create stories around them, you get negative stories. But I also think part of this process is that our old way of thinking about public safety also creates these harmful narratives. Like these folks are, to your point earlier when you talked about it's like if they don't go to jail, then they're not being held accountable. And it's like that's not the case. We know restorative justice matters. We know that folks that all of this can be is preventative, but I think there's this mindset that says those who create this habit can't be changed and won't be changed, and that this is going to be their narrative forever. So until we can get folks to move from old mental models around what public safety is and how it's deployed, it's going to always be an issue for us. And I think even some of the language that we use around crimes and it's just some of the narratives that we as practitioners also say it continues to add to that, right? So I think some of it is how do we check ourselves on the language that we use and how do we make sure we talk about the people and the communities that we're talking about with love, with respect, and then talk about the system as the thing that's creating these environments and not the people. The people are just living in these environments that were created by racism and other systems. And I think that's the things that we got to continue to push back on is that we can't use language that's harmful and we can't allow other folks to use. Like, I hate when police chiefs and mayors stand up and say, we're going to get these thugs and this and that. It's like, we've got to shift the way that we talk about folks because when you can talk about folks in that kind of way, then you're never going to put solutions that's going to be helpful. They're always going to be harmful.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
Oh,
Ro, go ahead, please.
I'll jump in, just from our perspective, as we approach this work, we're doing it with the utmost respect of those that are doing the hard work on the ground and really listening to what's important to them. I feel like every listening session we end up in tears because of just the incredible stories that we hear. And building that empathy for those doing the work and for the community is so critical in this work. And I think, we're careful, especially talking to a general public audience, to not perpetuate any stereotype. But we also don't want to water down and sugarcoat the work because that is so important. And so I know we haven't shared the work with the folks in the room, but I think what was hardening for us is when we tested some of this work kind of in progress, and this is again general population, we found that the majority of respondents found the ads to be hopeful. They found the ads to be inspiring, and only about 1 in 10, so single digits, found them to be stereotypical. So I think we've just in working with the CVI working group to figure out how do we ride that balance of authenticity, but also not perpetuating stereotype and having that empathy. And we're all human. This is about safety and focusing on the positive outcome of
Mhm.
that conversation, of the interaction was just so key. And I think that is a lesson in how when we've been just testing and iterating on how do we talk about this to the public, that those are just really key things for us to think through.
That's really, really helpful. Andrew, go ahead.
Sure. Last week we actually kicked off a 6-week training series, which is a neighborhood care response and community support training, which is basically we have approximately 60 to 80 folks that are turning out, and tonight is one of those part of the 6-week training series. But mainly what it is that our CVI partners, HCTC, leading with other public safety practitioners. And what I'm referring to is that we have our OVP here in the city of Hartford as well. We brought them to the fore on the first night. We brought other agencies to the fore to pretty much informationally share what their role is in the community and then engage the residents on how they view these departments, these strategies in the community, and what they believe could enhance those services, and how those agencies and programs can make more of an impact. And so the first half hour is really about just informational. The rest of the whole 2 hours after that is really around residents getting engaged with conversations around what this means in this community. And so that's going to go on for the next 6 weeks. This is something we do fairly regularly over the years since we've been around. But that's been one of the ways that I believe that for us, it's been one of the ways that has always advised or us on how we can do this work more effectively and dispel some of the myths around the work, and at the same time build up support for it as well.
Thank you so much. Um, there's a question for you, Ro, about going back to the slide around timeline, to give people a sense of what's coming.
Yes, I know I went through that really quickly. So we're starting to roll out the campaign in really early May, kind of the first part of May, and we're going to start with a documentary, so 18-minute documentary with all of the screening guides and material available for partners to use. That will be kind of most of May, and then we're going to start to roll out the advertising with the amplification guide for partners in June.
All right, that's really helpful. All right. There's I'm looking at, I know there have been some responses in the chat, but there have been some questions about the relationship between storytelling, narrative and storytelling, and like actually seeing change, like policies that have shifted, mayors that are more deeply engaged. And I think this is something that this panel can offer many examples. And certainly share for the Javi, our work on Medicaid and securing Medicaid to fund CVI rested on a lot of what we learned in our policies about, in our polling on how to message this. So the economic message that Andrew was talking about, that this actually saves money, that it worked really well, right? When you invest in something and those dollars expand over time because those investments can drive change, and they're more cost effective than what we're doing right now. Right. That connection really resonated for policymakers in particular, who are always looking at their budget, and drove change. So we've been successful in about a dozen states and counting. Even in these times, people are considering this and want to continue to move the policy. It's really powerful what narrative can do in community. And I wanted to just open up to the panel other examples of the way that storytelling and narrative have actually changed behavior on the policy side or elsewhere.
Jump in just real quick, Fatima.
Please.
Thanks for that question, because I think that's right. Like, so when we're on the ground, especially during the Leading the Way tour, we get to engage with a lot of people. And part of our process is to tell the story of the work that's happening on the ground. Like, so we put a timeline together to allow the community to see like how long this work has been happening, what were some of the major wins. And it's a beautiful scene for folks to actually see their work reported back out to them so that they can see where they plugged in and how they moved. And what we've seen on the ground is that it moves not just the people who do the work, but it also moves policymakers. We've seen
Yeah.
post-tour mayors saying, hey, we're going to add more money to the budget. We've seen policy changes. And this is like in real time. Like, so to tell the story and the narrative, because I think one of the things we failed to do, not only as a network, but as community members, is tell that story and put it in a visual for
Yeah.
folks to see the whole history of it. Because folks feel
Right.
like CVI just showed up on the scene 2 years
Right.
ago, but folks have been doing this for 30 plus years. And to give that whole narrative and to let folks see where their successes have been is a powerful tool. So you can see it in real time from city to city. Different things happen when you tell those stories and tell those narratives, but it's also different when outside people come and tell your story for you, right? So
Isn't
it's an
it funny how
added
that
plus.
happens? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Well, we are at time and we want to have Eddie close us out. But I want to just thank our panelists. You all are remarkable in your own right and represent a larger field that is just so powerful. So, Eddie, please close us out. But thank you. Thank you for the time.
We're just echoing the expression of gratitude here to Andrew, Anthony, and Ro. Obviously, Fatima, thank you so much for facilitating such a rich discussion. We could spend a few hours in this. What comes to mind right away, it's something you said earlier. I think about like the HIV campaign, the polio vaccination, tobacco campaign, the seatbelt, the drinking driving, the mental health, all these campaigns, right, that really help shift the way that our neighbors, our community really looks at these issues. And this is no different. There's still lots of work ahead of us, lots of work ahead of us, but really commend all those initial efforts that are taking place right now to move us in the right direction. And this idea of visibility of gap that Andrew mentioned too, it's important that we continue to think about that. I want to just end by saying thank you to our audience and to also encourage folks to join us on April 16 as Community Justice will be closing us out with a final webinar on policy and advocacy. The link and the information should be in the chat, and it will also be sent via email to those who are currently registered to this event. And then lastly, we know that there is a report coming up in the upcoming in early April around the narrative, it's the CVI narrative. So Fatima, for you and Javi and those all connected to that, really looking forward to reading the report. And I'm excited about what's coming up. Excited about this listening session that we're doing in Atlanta pretty soon. And for all those who are joining us, please continue to stay with us, be patient with us, and we continue to encourage you to be in this journey. Thank you all, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.